All right, so I'm here with Amanda Lane, and me and her have we've talked a few times over Slack, but we never actually gotten onto a Zoom call and really had a conversation. So this is going to be pretty interesting. And Amanda, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, just give us your elevator pitch.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so my elevator pitch. So before Lambda, I was a sales agent at a company, and I was promoted there to be like a mid-level management position called a team support coordinator. And I figured out what my day-to-day tasks were by what my team needed to be their best. I loved that job. I really was very creative with it and loved it. After a couple of years, we had some layoffs, and I was part of that. So I had an opportunity to take some time off of work with the severance package they gave me. And my friend told me about Lambda School. So I looked into it, and she wanted to go too. So we both applied, and I got in, and she lost interest. So so that's kind of funny how it all worked out. But I had a couple months before school started, so I thought, I'm gonna get on and study some JavaScript and like try to do this on my own, and maybe I can just like be a developer on my own. And I quickly realized, that was not the case, and that I really did need this school to kind of help guide me to get to the point where I wanted to be with my skills to go out into like the workforce. So got to go to Lambda School. I started in March of 2019, so almost a year and a half ago. I had a unique opportunity where I got to be a section lead and a team lead several times throughout the program. So I probably extended my time at Lambda more than most. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm always interested in how other people have heard about Lambda School because I mean, until recently, like now I'm seeing a bunch of like ads and stuff for them. But back when we first joined, there weren't a lot of advertisement for them. Wasn't a big marketing push for them. So like different people get in different ways. Every time I've talked to somebody, there's always a new weird way that they found out about Lambda. For me, it was also through a random friend who said, "Hey, try this out," and I'm like, "What is this?" But
yeah, she's like, my friend is always finding like the weirdest things. She'll, come up with the strangest like get rich quick schemes, and this was one of hers. And I, for some reason, this time jumped on it with her, and I don't regret it at all. So
that's hilarious.
it was not a get rich quick scheme at all. It was not quick at all, but totally worth it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people tend to go through the feeling of like this is probably a scam. It sounds too good to be true. So you tend to go through that. And coming from the get rich quick scheme friend, which I have one of those as well, and he's the one that talked me into going to Lambda. It kind of like sets you back, and you're like, wait a minute, is this real? But yeah. All right, cool. So appreciate that rundown. I do hear a lot of great things about you as far as your time as a section lead and all that, which I think it's kind of rare. There's only a few people I've heard that have like no doubt come out and mentioned how much they enjoyed their section lead. They usually don't have a lot of interactions with them. All right, so let's just dive into some of the questions that I have here. So the first question is going to be, how much coding experience did you have before joining Lambda School?
So really the only reason I knew code even existed was, well, I guess it kind of came in and out of my existence like throughout my life. So like uh, my mom brought home a computer and taught me how to use it, and it was completely run off of DOS. And so that's kind of where it started. And I thought it was just the coolest thing. Even though all I was doing was like Excel spreadsheets and like pie charts and like Word documents, I just thought it was just the coolest thing that I knew how to do that. And then she got me another laptop, which was JavaScript. Now that I look back and remember, it was years ago. So it wasn't the kind of JavaScript that we've learned now. It was very basic. It was just like if else statements of like, are you old enough to drive inputs? And it was really cool. So she taught me how to do that. Brought that home for me to learn. And then I got to be a teenager, and blogging was really cool at my age as a teenager. So we had LiveJournal and MySpace, and I ended up finding out you could code your own layouts and like customize your layouts like how you wanted it. I ended up coding my layouts more than I was blogging on them, and I think that was like really when I super got into code, and I'd spend hours just like making my live journal or my MySpace look, as cool as somebody else's. I would look through their code or kind of get inspiration from how they did it. But I didn't know about docs then. And so I think I was very limited to like what I was able to do. So I had a Etsy shop, and then I kind of learned from some friends that you want to have your own standalone store. This was back in 2011. And I ended up going through WordPress for that. And so I kind of had some experience with setting up WordPress with some widgets for e-commerce to set up like a standalone shop away from Etsy, just in case, just to kind of build my brand away from Etsy. So I kind of just dabbled in code as a way to use it as a tool to like express myself in other ways. And so, but it was very, very limited. Like, again, I did not really read docs. I just kind of would look at code and, logic my way through it and figure out how I could customize it based on that. So I was very, very limited. And that's pretty much all I had before joining Lambda, was just some very basic HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery.
It's funny that you mentioned the MySpace thing, because I think that a lot of us thought that we were like full-on programmers going through MySpace, just making our own layouts and all that. So when my buddy was talking to me about Lambda School, like he started talking about programming and all that, and the first thing I thought about was the MySpace layout, and I was like, yeah, I've done that before. But mine, like all I wanted to do was put some weird like MIDI format music, and then twinkling backgrounds and all this other weird stuff. So
I think we all had like our own signature. Like I always liked making things like transparent and like really cool backgrounds, and like, I don't know, like I loved using the dotted or the dashed borders, like really thick.
Yeah, mine took forever just to load on anybody's machine. So.
Oh no, yeah. I know, I kind of miss the old school HTML style with like the twinkling backgrounds and like the very pixelated artwork everywhere.
I mean, you can still get that experience if you go into like the Space Jam website or something. That's a masterpiece. It's still up for some reason. I don't know why. But
that's awesome.
All right, so question number 2. How did you feel about coming into the program?
Oh, I had no idea what I had signed myself up for. I just thought I was going to learn how to make some websites, like, so, if it doesn't work out, then I can just make a little website for my shop. I had no idea that I was learning how to make like, websites in databases that were able to contain like millions of users, and like the kind of, the extent of what kind of programming I was going to be doing. So I came in very naive and not really knowing what to expect, which is, I think, fine. I want to be very honest about that, because I think a lot of people probably feel that way, and maybe that keeps them from signing up or going for it. And so that shouldn't, because I really thought I was just going to be making some more WordPress websites, and that was it.
I think that's very common. Yeah, I think that people underestimate what it is that a developer or software engineer or whatever you want to call it does. And when you ask a lot of people who do have a lot of experience, they'll usually tell you the common 3 of just learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And that doesn't sound too bad. But once you get deeper into the weeds, it's like you'll learn these things plus like 40 different things on top of them and all that. And once you're done with the school, I feel like you came in and got a lot more than what you asked for. So yeah, I think that's a very common feeling. All right, so number 3, what were the best and worst parts of the program in your opinion?
All right, so I'll start with the best. Let me think. Those are tough questions for me.
Yeah, I know.
Because first of all, I had a unique experience where I got to do things that other people probably didn't get to do in the program, but also, I don't know, so let me think. The best one, if I had to pick one thing out of everything, I would say that that you learn so much more than code. Like that Lambda is like the on switch to, it's like 2 things for me. And I think it can be this for everybody if you really lean into the program and take advantage of it. It's like a reset button, and you get the second wind at life without having to like spend tons of money on a student loan with tons of interest that's going to rack up, and spend 4 years plus doing that, to get that skill with like really no guarantee, no network, no help when it comes to that job search at the end. So it's like this really cool, I thought my life was over and that I would never have a chance at what I get to do now. Like I thought that I'm 34. So like that to me, I thought like my time had passed. Like you're done. Like, like I know I could go back to school or whatever, but that's so much money and the return on your investment versus what I was making previously, like in sales, it just didn't make sense. And so that was really cool. And also like, there's just this on button to my motivation now. Like it's not just with coding, it's with everything. Like I'm just inspired in my life to do all of the goals that I had, not just the coding in my career, but like my fitness goals, my nutrition goals, my, any goals that I had for anything. Like I just am much more motivated to go for them now. And I don't know what it is about the program that does that for you, but I think it's like learning to just keep like left, right, like keep going forward, even if you don't feel like it. And like they teach you to keep going, even if like you don't like it doesn't make sense right now, or like you're not feeling like you get the full picture. Like I think that's part of it. Like they teach you just keep moving forward, keep going.
I find it interesting that you did mention your name or your age. I'm 35 actually, but I do get quite a few comments on some of my videos where people do ask like, "Hey, I'm 30 something or 40 something. Am I too old?" And this and that, and and
Right.
to me, like it's a ridiculous question because I've never thought about my age. Like I never thought that I'm too old to do something. But I guess it's mostly the kid in me.
I guess
Uh,
I think because in my mind, I'm like, man, if I start now, by the time I'm done, I'm going to be like 39 or like 30, whatever. And it's like, that was to me why. But like with Lambda, it was like, oh, well, when I went in, I thought 30 weeks. Which, honestly, like there's no way my brain and my abilities and what I came in knowing like that 30 weeks was going to be enough for me. Like I needed more to be where I'm at now. But I also think like I way overestimated how much I needed to know to get my first job too. So.
All right, so I'm not letting you get out of this part. What's the
Oh
worst
yeah,
part
yeah,
of the program?
yeah, for sure. So worst part. Let me
And
think.
worst doesn't necessarily mean that it's like horrible or anything like that. Maybe something that you think they
No.
could improve.
Yeah, exactly. Like a part of the program that they can improve. And so yeah, like because I've heard lots of criticisms about the school, and the funny part to me is like these are the parts that I like don't agree with. Like these are not to me like parts of the school that I think are a problem. But it's not perfect. And I will say, working as a section lead, I got to kind of help with the flex program, and I do think that there's a lot of stress. I think and I don't know what the answer is, but like I would say the worst part of the program is it is very stressful, especially for me. I think like I had the stress of not only like getting through the program on my own self and like, I have a life and like an income I need, and like I'm supporting myself. I live alone. I don't have anybody to rely on for money. So that's stressful. And, the program itself is very fast paced. You can feel like an island sometimes because it is fully remote. And if you don't find connections with people to help you, it can be very scary and like stressful because you're not getting it and you don't know who to reach out to for help. And then also on top of that, when you're a team lead or a section lead, you have the stress of like, well, now I have other people who pay attention to like what I do and like how I act, and like now I'm a role model. And so like every tweet I make, every, every Slack message I leave, it's like I'm leaving an impression and like I'm setting the tone for like what's okay for other people to do, and like for how other people are going to act. And like, and also like if I fail, like all these people are watching. And so like that's, I have an ego just like everybody else does. And it's hard. Like that's a lot of stress. So I will say like the worst part of the program is, I mean, everyone's human. We all have egos. It is stressful. It's hard. And you also are up against like long hours and bad eating habits because you're up long hours and you'd rather be coding than cooking. So you're going to eat something that's fast, and you're not going to work out because you want to code instead. And you're not going to sleep because you want to code instead. And so on top of that, like you're on, even more stress. So that's probably the worst part of the program.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
inevitable. It's like you cannot avoid acting like that like once you're in the depths of it.
yeah. I try to stress to people that like the importance of things like taking breaks and creating connections with other people, especially like sometimes one of the roots of imposter syndrome to me comes from you comparing yourself to others, which makes them look very intimidating to you. And so I try to tell people that if you ever come across that where somebody is very intimidating because they seem to be flying through something that you're struggling with, take that opportunity to reach out to that person. Try to establish a connection, maybe a mentor like relationship with that person. But that's just another way that you can keep yourself sane because you are going to be like remote by yourself a lot of times. Your family's not really going to be able to understand what you're going through. The only people that really are going to understand are the other students and just other staff members and all that. So yeah, I definitely try to tell people to create that connection.
Oh, for sure. Like if you are a student in Lambda School right now and you feel like you don't have anybody you can reach out to, you Slack message me, Amanda Lane, right now, and I will be your Lambda friend because I get that. Like the people here believed in me more than my family. So like, it's I hate answering that question because it was like so, it is stressful, but like there are so many great parts of this program though that make it so worth it to where it's like, yeah, running a marathon is also very stressful, but once you get to the end of it and you think back to like all of the work that you've put in and everybody who supported you along the way, it's so worth all the bad parts.
Yeah, very
I would
true.
do the bad parts all over again just because it's worth it.
I would do the bad parts, but I would just slow it down a little
Yeah,
bit.
no, for sure. I would definitely, yeah, I won't answer that yet because I know that's
I would have at least flexed once. That's one thing I
a
should have done.
hundred percent, 100%. Because back in my day at Lambda, when you flexed, you were exiled from the community. It was a very different thing. So it was like you did not want to flex because you didn't have the same program anymore. You were actually in a flex group. You weren't in just like a different cohort. You were in a group that did not go to the same lectures. It was very so I'm glad that that's changed because that was a reason you did not want to flex because it was like
Yeah,
shameful almost.
yeah. All right. So number four, was there anything you wish you knew before jumping in?
Yeah, I'd say, I always say I wish I had known more JavaScript coming in, but I think that's the whole point was there was only so much I could learn before I came in that I needed help to get past a certain point. But I do wish that maybe I had known, like how, like what we were talking about with the health stuff, like boundaries and like, but again, like I think everything I didn't know coming in, I was just gonna have to learn along the way. Like I came in knowing what I needed to know, and it all worked out the way it had to. And so I learned what I had to learn along the way because those are the lessons I learned as I was going through them. I guess I'm in a very like zen place with everything right now with how I went through Lambda because it just all like came together and worked out the way it did. And I can't say that everyone's going to have that same experience, but I hope everybody does. I think if you lean in and you say yes to lots of opportunities and you're open to things and you're willing to take your amount of responsibility that's appropriate, then you will have that experience too.
I think that's a good way of thinking about it. Coming in with a clean slate, understanding that you're not going to know everything. I think that that's a big one because so many people worry and they think about, I wish I would have known this and that, and there's no way that you can possibly know it all. I think that's definitely a good point.
I was really lucky because my very first one-on-one with my TL, I like cried and I was like, I think I should just quit. I think I should. Poor guy. Like I had no idea at this point. He's just a student too. He's probably like, what the heck? This is his first week as a TL. Like, just got a crier. But I just was so overwhelmed by, like you said, like everybody around me seemed to know like everything, and I wasn't doing badly. I was fine. Like I just didn't. I wasn't flexing anything that I knew really, and I just assumed like when these people were talking about preprocessors and stuff, like to me that seemed like so advanced. Everything seems so advanced when you don't know it. And so when other people talk about things you don't know, you just assume like if they know one thing I don't know, they must know like 1,000 things I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So, number five. So, being a woman in tech, did you feel there were challenges you had to face? If so, how did you overcome them?
I think the challenge for women in tech is that people want to tell you there is no challenge and that they want to ignore it and they want you to ignore it, and that way everybody feels good. And I've done that. I did that for a long time, and then I realized like that's not good for my fellow women. Like it's good for me in the moment, but it's very selfish to like other women in the community. So I stopped doing that. and I started doing things for women in our community at school, and I want to start doing that more outside of the community once I'm comfortable in my work. But I would say, yeah, the biggest challenge is, being made to feel like there is no challenges for women, and that your feelings of inequality or being ignored or being left out, or like maybe not being taken as seriously as your male counterparts, are like, to be told that that's not valid, or you're crazy to feel that way. That's the real challenge, is to combat that, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think that from what I've seen during my time working at a company, like there's definitely a major shift in a lot of people's thinking. Like I feel like a lot of these issues are being more exposed and talked about, which is it's a great thing. You know, not just sex, but gender, race, all of the other things are being talked about a lot more openly and more safely. So I think that there is a bit more awareness. We still have a long way to go with everything that we need to do in order to maintain like real equality for everyone. But I think that we're generally going in the right direction. Um, just hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later.
I agree. You're definitely one of the students who has recognized me and my skills as and I've always felt like you've treated me as an equal. And most of the people at Lambda, I feel like, have treated me like an equal, and have never treated me like, poorly. But I would say, like you brought up, there are just certain things that are baked into our culture that people just do without even thinking. I think
Yeah.
they just, they will write off someone's ideas just because there is like a deeply rooted idea that maybe you're not as credible as somebody else, based purely on conditioning from how they were raised. And so
Yeah.
that's just what we're up against. So
That does happen. I did speak with an engineer at my job that said something very similar. A lot of her advice was just be loud.
yeah,
Be
no,
loud
I'm,
and make
I'm
it heard.
super lucky because my boss at my new job is very experienced in helping to advocate for women in tech and to help get them into like more of a technical voice. And he wants to help me with achieving my goals outside of work, with like being a technical speaker and an advocate for other women in tech. So
That's great.
really, really exciting.
That's great. All right. So last question. So any tips for new students looking to get to where you are?
Yeah, so I'd say, I got the awesome experience to work with lots of students, and I'd say that the repeating pattern that I saw with students who weren't successful were the ones who felt like it was everyone else's responsibility for them to succeed, except for them. And so, I mean, if I can give you one tip, it's that if you come to Lambda, like, I don't know what the marketing is like now, but, and I, like you said, I didn't see any commercials until I started looking at Lambda's website, and then the algorithm on YouTube started showing me commercials then.
Yeah.
But I remember it was like a guy breaking his keyboard because like that's how frustrated he was. Do you remember that commercial? Like
Yeah.
that was the more, and like everything I saw from students at Lambda was like, this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done, and like this is going to be so challenging, and it's really hard, but it's worth it. And so like to me coming in, I guess I had the right expectations, but then I've heard some people come in and they thought like, man, this is like way harder than I expected it to be, and I think they thought it was going to be like, oh, you just come to Lambda, and the Lambda is like the Harvard of coding boot camps. And it's like, no, nobody cares that you went to Lambda. Like they just care, like, do you have the skills that they need to get the job done that they're paying you for? And so if I can give anybody tips, it's that like Lambda can only take you so far. Like you have to do the work yourself. And if you're coming in thinking that you can just do the bare minimum and get a job, like, yeah, you're probably going to get the bare minimum job. You just are, you're going to get out of the program what you put into it. So if you are going to come to Lambda, especially full time like I did, then you have to be willing to give it full time if you want to get out of it what I did.
Which is brings me to a question that I commonly get is how much time do you normally spend on the projects? And I generally tell people they give you enough time to like to work during class hours. However, like that's probably not going to be enough for you to really absorb all of that information that you want and go beyond it. if you just go based on what they're teaching you and that's it, and never look at anything else yourself, you're probably going to be suffering in the long haul. So definitely good advice. You get out what you put in. Highly agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're a hard worker too, and you really, I know I got to watch your job search and your journey through Lambda. So I know you get that for sure.
Oh, it was so stressful. I mean, during the program, I had a lot of fun. Like I still look back on it, like just randomly sitting here thinking while I'm working, and just have the really fond memories of sitting there. And I had Josh Nell teaching me the front end side, and that was like an amazing experience because you don't expect to have an experience like that during something that's so serious like programming and all that. So when he breaks out things like the banjo and starts playing for people and relaxing and telling you about techniques for just taking breaks and things like that, definitely a lot different than what I thought it would be. It was challenging, but I think that there's a mix of like there's frustration, there's fun, there's you creating something new, you finally getting those aha moments. There's a lot of a big mixture of it mixed with the frustration. Like the frustration's there, it's just mixed, but very interesting point.
No, for
So
sure. I like that you said that. Like it's, you learn like that. I think you learn after you have a couple freakouts that like snapping at your coworker is going to be way more damaging to your career than a bug in your code. So like it's way more important to learn to just be cool and like with your and have good relationships with your teammates than it is to like be the best coder. And like I think going through that a few times you learn that. Oh yeah, and I know you brought up like time for projects. There's only one time in the program where I will say like that they didn't, but they changed it. So like it used to be, I would say during React, that was an unhealthy time of my life. There was no way that a normal person who had no experience with React was going to get through that without. I was up until like 11 o'clock at night. My boyfriend and I broke up during that time. It was really, I mean, I was sacrificing entirely too much. I should have flexed, but instead, like, I just dedicated like every single waking moment to try to get through that period of time. So now they broke that into like 2 periods, which I think it's like 2 units, which is 2 months instead of just one now. And now it's like way too easy in my opinion. But like sometimes, like now I think like they give you an insane amount of time to do the assignments in the afternoon. To me, it's like that's where I think that maybe they should give more resources to people so that they're a little bit more curious. I think that you could easily like get a project done now in like 30 or 45 minutes. And then the rest of the afternoon you could do nothing. But really, I think like the secret is if when you get curious. So like if you're done with the project, like start working on a personal project and build a personal project, because that's what got me my job was a personal project and my excitement about it. And I bet you had that same experience too, where when you spoke with an employer about a personal project and you're excited about it, that's when they really were interested in you.
yep, I think that back when I went through, they didn't have build week or anything like that. They just had project week.
Which cohort did you start in?
14.
Oh, wow. They didn't have build weeks then?
No, we came in like actually when we started CS, that's when they came out with Build Week. So they didn't know exactly what to do with the CS students yet.
So
So
what did you all do between units?
we did Project Week, which was everybody does the same project for like a week. We all run our own little Kanban Trello board, and they give us some designs, and we basically build this project for a week.
By yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the most boring thing ever, and I'm so glad that they changed it to a build.
Yeah.
Everybody had the same project. Some people would go above and beyond because like for me when I got bored, like I really wasn't that interested in the projects that they gave us. So
I just think like if you're going to be into programming, like you probably should. I mean, this might be a really unpopular answer, and some people are going to hate me for saying this, but like I don't know. I think if you don't have an interest in it in your personal time, then maybe it's not like the best career choice because like it's inevitable. You're going to have to do some learning at work, outside of work.
mhm.
I think if you don't have like an interest in it, like you're probably not going to really like it as a career. But I
Yeah,
mean, most people don't like their job. So by all means, like do it if that's what you want to do just for the paycheck. But like I do like that I enjoy the job too, and I think that you should take into account like, do you enjoy this? Like, do you take interest in it? Like, are you curious? Like, does it excite you to build these things?
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah,
like?
I think that that's super important. Yeah, like my job, like I didn't think I would actually enjoy it as much as I did because it's consulting. So you don't get to own a product long term. You basically work on a project, and in some cases, you might not even work on it through the entirety of the project life. So you'll work on it for a couple months, give it to the client, move on to another project. So I didn't think I would really enjoy that. Basically, it's labs, like perpetual labs over and over again.
That's tough because I get attached, so I could understand.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes like this is your project, and you have that ownership there, but then they tell you like you no longer have ownership, we're moving you to another project. So I didn't think I was gonna like that, but because of that, I'm able to hop around and use different technologies. Um, Most other companies, I think they end up having a lot of internal tools that you have to build with, and you're long term on a team, which is really cool. You get cohesion and everything, but you're not learning like a lot of the new fun fancy stuff that you're hearing other people learning. You're generally using a lot of the same technology. So with my job, like I'm able to do a lot of that. Like I'm also able to kind of see what happens when a project is first starting and implement a lot of my own thoughts and like what I think we should use and influence like the tech lead's final decision on what we get to use. So like, and I find that fun, and I didn't think I was going to find that fun. I honestly, when they told me that it was a consulting agency, I was kind of like, I don't know. I'll go through the process of applying and see what happens, but I don't know. So definitely, yeah. But project week, like I think everybody was done with it for like their project for like after the first 2 days, and then they ended up having like the next 3 days to like kind of do nothing. For me, I took that time to like start learning the next module or building a side project or something. I always had a side project going, especially once we got into back end. I was so worried about whether or not I understood what the heck was going on with everything. And I found out that I did it. I didn't understand much of it. So when I started my own side project, we had Luis Hernandez as the instructor.
I love
And
place.
yeah, I love him too, but he ended up calling me in front of everybody and basically like walk him through what to do for building the entire backend. And he thought I was cheating because of the fact that I actually knew what to do. And he's like, how do you know like what you're supposed to do? And I'm like, because while we're going through these classes, I'm also building something like a backend project on my own for like basically this front end and back end project that I have going on. So every time you teach us something after class, I go back to my project, and
Exactly.
after I finish Lambda's thing, and then I apply it to my project.
Yeah, that's so smart. That's exactly what I started doing too. I thought, actually, I had a really hard time during back end because that's when I was just beginning to like learn how to connect the front end and the back end. And I was having all these issues with it, and I was terrible at it, and I was like everything was buggy. But then once I got to the end of back end, that's when I built a full stack project, front to back, and or actually back to front, and then that's when I was like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand. But like you're saying, like the personal projects is where I really honed in and learned. But the team projects too, I think, are invaluable because I know a lot of people come out of it thinking like, oh, that's the problem. I think that a lot of people have that needs to be maybe a little bit more talked about is if you're just relying on the bare minimum of the assignments and build week projects to get you through, like your portfolio is going to probably feel weak to you. Unless you just happen to get that very lucky build week team that has like a killer project and that killer labs team. But other than that, these projects might not. Labs usually you're going to get a good project, but with build weeks, yeah, it's luck of the draw, and sometimes those are more like for your interviews so that you can talk about working with others on a team because I think that's really important too. I know that that's something that employers are thinking about when they hire you is, are you going to be a problem on the team? Like they need the team dynamic to stay, you know, easy to deal with. That's one thing that they don't want to have to deal with is like problems on the team for interpersonal issues.
Yeah, and like I said, for me, like I didn't really count my project week projects as actual portfolio projects because
Yeah.
to me they were super weak. So I had this like really bad anxiety moment just before I went into labs, like because I'm like, man, I'm almost done with the program, and I don't really have any projects that I would feel proud of showing.
Right.
And so that's when I just like started grinding out like side projects like crazy. I finished the one that I was working on while doing back end, and then started like a whole new one because I didn't feel comfortable with Redux at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I'm going to create a project that's like very Redux heavy. I decided to learn context before Redux, and so it kind of helped me understand why we're doing everything. But yeah, grinding out those side projects really helps out. I think it also helps raise your confidence because now you don't feel that your portfolio and resume are going to look too bad. And then you're able to explore things that you may have kind of just, I don't know, slithered through. There are some things like Redux that where I just felt like I just snuck
Oh
through.
yeah.
Like,
Redux was what broke me.
yeah, it
But
felt
now
like
it's funny, I love it.
yeah. Now I love it. Yeah, I love using it. When people say bad things about Redux, I put on my knight in shining armor outfit and I defend it. But back then, it didn't feel that way at all. I was
No, for
I was
sure.
trying to talk everybody out of using Redux.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like then you learn, you learn React, and then you learn Redux, and then you learn, async Redux, and then your brain is just so confused, and it really doesn't understand everything you've taken in at that point. So it's I think nobody understands Redux until they've used it quite a few times, and then it makes
Yeah,
sense. And then you learn hooks, and then everything's way better. So
yeah, yeah.
I love that they teach hooks first now. It's so funny. My friend was laughing because we learned class components, obviously, that first. And so I heard about hooks, but I didn't, I was like, I had a really bad habit of, it's going to be too hard. I'm already taking on so much what I've learned already. Like, I'm not, like, I can't take on anymore. So, like, I'm not going to learn this. And so then I finally learn it and I laugh at myself because I'm like, well, this is easier. So it's funny that, like, I kept myself from learning something that would have made using React easier just because I was afraid to try. So like that's why I tried to give that advice of, if something seems too hard, like try it because you might actually find that it's not as hard as you thought or that you're capable of more than you thought.
I think it's still good to know both, though.
Oh
Like
yeah.
definitely good to start off with the hard things to me, uh, just so that you know why they may suck to the point where they came out with a better version.
Yeah,
Like
I
for
agree.
me,
I like that I learned class components first, personally, and then hooks because I know that what it gives me and like how it makes things a little bit easier than what we did.
yeah, it lets you speak on it more um, in a more educated fashion. I think when people ask you what's the difference between class and hooks, because a lot of people are always worried like which one should I go with, and then now you could tell them situations where one would be better than other. I have my own personal preference for when to use which. I
Right.
do a mix of both, but that's because I was able to experience them both.
Right.
Um, there are certain instances where I refuse to use hooks for, and some where I just absolutely love classes. So it's just good to learn as much as you can about the entire ecosystem that you're going to use.
Well, exactly. And now you've done it enough to where you've been able to form your own technique and opinions on things. And I think that that's really, I was thinking about that today ahead of time, which was that, like, code is really to us just a tool to express ourselves. We're all, like at Lambda, everybody is motivated and interested in things besides code too. A lot of them are entrepreneurs who want to build their own startups, and it's really
Yep.
like code is just a tool that we're using as artists to express ourselves. And so you just need to build and build and build, just like an artist would art and art and art, however it is that they art,
They just keep
and
hard.
until you until you find your technique and your opinions about like what you like and like what you think is correct, and that's really all you can do with it.
Yep. All right, Amanda. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate. I think we went through a lot of stuff, probably a lot more than either of us planned. But I really enjoyed the talk with you today. Um, do you have anything else you want to say to everybody viewing?
Oh, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I'm just a normal person, and I want to put out there, that I had the reason that I pushed myself so hard was that I had the I'm only not only fighting the stigma of being a boot camp grad and not having a computer science degree, but I don't have any degree. I don't even have a high school diploma. I have a GED, and I don't really talk about that a lot, but I do want to put that out there because I want anybody else who may be watching this to know, that if you're in that same position, that I'm not special, like I'm not unique. I am not super educated or more qualified than anybody else. I was working at a call center and I just so happened to be promoted at that call center working in management, but it was still at a call center. So, I took my life from being very, pretty average to below average to, doing basically what is my dream job since I was a child. So I think that I just want to put that out there that no matter where you're at in life, like, and there are people who come from even more difficult circumstances than I have that are, now owning homes and stuff from Lambda. So just there's nothing that isn't possible unless you decide that that's impossible.
All right, awesome. Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.